The story starts when some alien parasites from space arrive on Earth, and they begin controlling the brains of certain humans to survive. The story begins with our main protagonist, named Shinichi, who was sleeping and started hearing voices in his head. He wakes up, but nobody was there, but he definitely recalls hearing an unfamiliar voice telling him to be quiet. Shinichi regularly has weird dreams, so he thinks nothing of it at first. Shinichi then heads down for breakfast, but complains to his parents about his arm being very numb, and a feeling he's never felt before. But his mom told him that last night while he was having a nightmare, he woke up and wrapped headphones around his arm and told them a snake was in his arm. But Shinichi couldn't remember a thing, and so he heads to school. While on the way to school, a girl named Satomi Murano, Shinichi's love interest, tries pranking him, but unconsciously Shinichi's hand quickly stops her attack. After she starts to rage and her face turns red, and she then slaps Shinichi once his hand randomly decided to grab her chest. He immediately apologizes afterwards and doesn't understand what's going on with his hand. Later in class, Shinichi falls asleep and remembers what happened last night and recalls the alien parasite trying to enter his body. The alien first tried to enter the brain directly by crawling into his ear, but Shinichi was wearing his hearing aids, preventing the creature from getting inside, so he tries finding another way in. This time the alien tries to do it through his nose, but while attempting to get in, Shinichi sneezes, stopping him once again, but this time waking him up in the process. When Shinichi sees the creature, he confuses it with a snake, so he tries to kill the parasite with a rolled up piece of paper. However, while attempting to kill it, it quickly entered Shinichi's hand, and from there tries to go up to his brain. However, Shinichi then uses his headphones as a tourniquet to prevent the parasite from reaching his brain. His parents heard a lot of noise from upstairs and quickly check on Shinichi. As they enter the room, Shinichi tells them that a snake is inside his hand. However, his parents fail to see anything unusual, so they come to the conclusion that he was only dreaming. At that moment, in class, Shinichi wakes up. However, he begins to use his cell phone during lesson with his right hand, and for that reason he ends up being scolded by his teacher since cell phones are prohibited during class time. After the class, Shinichi is walking home, and at that moment, he observes a girl who is nearby. She's just about to be hit by a car, then Shinichi's hand moves unconsciously and stops the car, as he now has super strength thanks to the parasite in his right hand. There he realizes that his hand had transformed into an alien and begins to panic. He quickly rushes home, and is totally overwhelmed. When reaching his room, he takes out a knife and tries to pierce his right hand, but before he does this his hand transforms again, and starts talking to him in a kind of human-shaped like face. The alien introduces himself as Mijai. The parasite tells Shinichi that he's eaten his right hand, and so he begins laughing and then tries to attack him, but Mijai easily stops him. Then Shinichi asks what she is, but Mijai tells him that she's tired and then falls asleep. After that, Shinichi tries to investigate what is happening on the internet, but after not getting answers he decides to give up. The next day, Mijai has been studying and is now able to speak our language more fluently. There, Shinichi asks Mijai if he's an alien, but Mijai tells him that she doesn't know where she comes from, and the only thing she remembers is the moment she was born into his arm. The only emotion she feels so far is that she feels bad for not having reached Shinichi's brain, as that is the main target for their species' survival. However, Mijai tells Shinichi that she can still use his hand as long as they cooperate together. Shinichi gets scared and asks her if he is going to try and continue to get into his brain, but Mijai tells him that it is not possible anymore. Shinichi tells Mijai that he's going to ask the doctors to remove his arm, but Mijai tells him that if they are separated, then her as a parasite would die, and the Shinichi would be left without an arm, and they must learn to coexist together. After, Shinichi goes downstairs to have breakfast with his parents, and asks his mother for more food than usual, for what she is surprised since Shinichi normally has a bad appetite. After, his father begins to watch the news, where they report that lately there are violent incidents throughout the nation, but nobody knows why. This is because other parasites have begun controlling the minds of others, and have begun eating humans. Right after, a spider appears on the table, but instead of being scared of it like he usually is, this time Shinichi simply picks it up and throws it away, leaving his parents in shock as he's petrified of bugs. Afterwards Shinichi goes to school, but he diverts down a different route. At this moment Mijai wakes up, and asks him where he's going, to which he replies, saying he will go to the police to see what they can do to help him. However, Mijai warns him not to do it, since he could end up arrested, and taken to a lab and be tested on for the rest of his life, which is a huge disadvantage for both of them. However, the conversation is interrupted when Mijai begins to feel the presence of another parasite near them. She tells him that she can sense another one of her species not far from their location. She tells Shinichi that this could be a human who's had their brain eaten and taken over by another one of her kind. This freaks out Shinichi, and he tries running the other way. However, Mijai explains how they both need to find out more about the species, and it's good to see what they can find. Shinichi still disapproves, so Mijai has to drag him instead. After advancing around 200 meters, they came to an alley. Here they both meet another parasite, who is controlling a dog. They approach it and they can see a dog who is eating another dog. After, it turns around, then the dog tells Mijai that he too has failed, and is unsatisfied with its current host. The alien dog admits he's failed by having a dog as a host, and is jealous of Mijai and Shinichi. At that moment Mijai tells Shinichi to run, since the dog has a lot of anger inside him, and also violent tendencies. Shinichi doesn't understand, so Mijai explains that the alien wants to control his brain and is asking for a fight. So they both decide to wait for him at the park. The dog then transforms into a winged monster dog parasite and goes after them, but before he can do anything Mijai quickly transforms into a demonic claw and rips his heart out. She tells him that she done this since she cannot allow her host to die, otherwise she would also die too. So she will do almost anything to protect Shinichi. After this confrontation by another parasite, Shinichi continues on and is no longer interested in going to the police because without Mijai, Shinichi knows he would become an easy target for the other parasites that have started to invade planet Earth. Later at school, Shinichi begins to play basketball in PE class. Shinichi finally gets his chance to apologize to the impressed Murano, and their Tachikawa tells Shinichi that if he gets the next goal, Murano will forgive him for the chest incident from yesterday. So with the help of Mijai, he manages to score the ball with only 5 seconds remaining in the match. However, someone in the background isn't entirely happy about the two's reconciliation. Nagai, who has a secret crush on Murano, confronts Shinichi and beats him up for being too close with her. He tells Shinichi to fight back, to which Mijai does him the favor with a single blow and knocks some sense into his love rival, leaving him terrified, so Nagai flees in a hasty retreat. Meanwhile, Yuko talks to Shinichi about the sick mincemeat murders that's spreading like wildfire in various locations all over the world. At home, Shinichi confirms that cannibalism is normal for Mijai's kind as it's their means to survive. Shinichi then asks Mijai to help him stop the killings, to which his partner declines and makes it clear that it only values its own life. While reading the news on his phone, Mijai warns Shinichi that another one of its kind is nearby. Unlike the previous encounter, Shinichi is determined to meet the parasitical creature to figure out a way to save mankind from its likes. Shortly, Mr. B appears behind his back and chops off his own hand. He invites Mijai to relocate and inhabit the same host for them to be stronger and live longer. While Shinichi is on the edge, Mijai declines the offer by slashing Mr. B's body into pieces. The next day, Shinichi takes Murano on a pancake date. Though his mind's wandering elsewhere, he manages to gather his wits back. After the treat, they come across a group of delinquents throwing rocks at a poor cat buried in a sandbox. Shinichi interferes and saves the cat, leaving the kids staring in horror when he sees through their attempted assault. While Murano looks at him amazed, she tells Shinichi how he has changed. Just when Shinichi thinks that it's another typical day in school, Mijai informs him of a parasite close by. Much to his surprise, it appears right before his eyes when Ryoko Tamiya gets introduced as the new math teacher. After class, the teacher summons Shinichi to the guidance office where she declares that she has no intention of killing him. Instead, Tamiya expresses her interest to work together with Shinichi and suggests meeting him after school. At the cafe, Shinichi finds himself extremely anxious when he meets not just one but two of Mijai's kind. Tamiya brings her partner, Mr. A, all the while looking at Shinichi as prey. It appears that after they slept with each other and eventually got Tamiya pregnant, it resulted in a normal human baby. She stresses safeguarding her human identity, and should Shinichi pose a threat to her secret, an entire class will be wiped off the map in mere seconds. The next day, Mr. A carries out a frenzied attack on the school, killing some personnel and forcing the students to evacuate. To subjugate the enemy, Mijai suggests Shinichi take advantage of the crowded students as shields of meat. Shinichi quickly disapproves and runs to a higher floor to lure Mr. A and secure the safety of the other students. Just when he thinks that the tables he set up as barricades will come in handy, the madman breaks the glass window, leaving him cornered instead. With no way out, Shinichi gathers himself together and cooperates with Mijai. He takes the offensive role while his partner pulls off the defensive by holding out against Mr. A's attacks. As soon as Shinichi sees an opening, he stabs the enemy with a metal table leg straight to his heart. While it seems a fatal strike, Mr. A somehow manages to hold off his immediate death. He walks through the corridor in hopes to share a host with Tamiya. He eventually finds her, however, he also finds himself caught in an explosion set up by his supposed partner. With the sudden turn of events, Tamiya is forced to quit her job. Shinichi sets out to meet her, thinking if he should deal with her himself. He then tries to persuade Tamiya to stop preying upon humans as he and Mijai survive without the need for bloodshed. However, it's a different story for Tamiya. She explains that all animals have a specific directive and that of her kind is set to devour the humans. After a pep talk, Tamiya threatens to kill Shinichi but holds herself back once she notices a sudden change in the latter's body. That night, an uninvited guest appears at Tamiya's doorstep. Things escalate quite quickly when Tamiya's mother somehow sees through her daughter as a fake. And so, the old lady succumbs to her death. The next day, Shinichi is taken aback when he notices that his arm is missing. Apparently, Mijai is experimenting with its mobility by separating itself from the host's body. Meanwhile, Shinichi's parents plan to take a vacation to the countryside, to which he strongly objects as he fears for their safety. Though after contemplating along with Mijai's instigation, Shinichi lets them go on the trip, leaving his mother confused by his mood swings. As Shinichi walks to school, he tries to make sense of what Tamiya told him that he's no longer pure. Mijai wakes up and sheds some light that he may undergo psychological changes in the days to come. Even if the people around him notice such a change, he dismisses the idea that he'll become a murderer. Shinichi runs to a group of thugs assaulting Nagai. He steps in to play hero only to get beaten and join him crouching on the ground. After stopping Mitsuo, Kana looks into Shinichi's eyes and gets terrified when she detects something inhuman inside him. Sometime later, Kana confronts Shinichi about what he's hiding, but he completely ignores her in return. Out of jealousy, Mitsuo with his gang abducts Murano. In an instant, Shinichi turns into a sandbag as Mitsuo beats him to a pulp. Seeing how Shinichi's body gets thrashed, Mijai threatens to take action. That is until Kana and Nagai with some other students show up and save him the trouble. Soon enough, a brawl ensues. Kana shows up again to apologize to Shinichi when she shakes his right hand and suddenly acts strange. As it turns out, Kana has the ability to detect a parasite despite being human. To stay out of trouble, Mijai warns Shinichi to be cautious around her. Shinichi's parents can be seen staring at the sunset, smiling all the while. That is until a parasite jumps into the scene and does quick work of beheading Nobuko. Kazuyuki calls his son but fails to make out a clear message as he's dying. Shortly, the line is cut off, leaving Shinichi frantic with worry. Soon enough, Nobuko shows up. Shinichi feels relieved, but the feeling is short-lived as soon as he realizes that his mother is now a parasitical creature. In a snap, she pierces her son's body straight to his heart. Before Shinichi becomes brain-dead, Mijai merges itself into his heart and repairs the damaged organ. After the risky relocation, not only does Shinichi is saved, but his vision becomes clear. As he completely breaks down, Shinichi receives a call from the hospital. Upon confirming that his father is still alive, he immediately leaves the house and vows to kill the parasite that took over his mother's body. As soon as Shinichi meets his father, his heart breaks, but somehow, he can't bring himself to cry. While he asks his dad about his mom, Kazuyuki chooses to lie about what he witnessed. As it turns out, both are in the same boat as they can't admit to each other the truth about the monsters. At night, Shinichi learns of Mijai's weakness as a result of repairing his mortally damaged body. It'll fall asleep for 4 hours a day, unable to detect parasites and sense danger within the time frame. The next morning, while Shinichi stays on guard outside the hospital, Mijai detects a parasite nearby. It appears that not only his vision has improved. He rushes to the location near the coast and runs into a seemingly different parasitical creature. Right there and then, he meets someone whose parasite also failed to reach the host's brain. Memory Yuta has a parasite stuck on his jaw. After hearing and being moved by Shinichi's story, Yuta decides to help him hunt his target. Back inside the inn, Mijai explains the sudden increase in Shinichi's enhanced physical abilities. Apparently, some of Mijai's cells after splitting its body circulated inside Shinichi, leaving him more and more inhuman each day. The next morning, Yuta informs Shinichi that he may have found his enemy. However, while chasing his prey, Mijai's weakness decides to show up. It at least morphs into a scythe before dozing off. Not long after, the fake Nobuko catches up to Yuta and attacks him. It's a one-sided battle as Yuta gets pierced straight to his chest and falls over a cliff. Soon enough, Shinichi enters the scene, staring in horror at his mother's killer. With his enhanced attributes, he easily dodges her attacks. He overwhelms his opponent until he lets his guard down and receives a cut on the head. While he displays hesitation to kill his prey, someone lends him a hand and gets things done and over with. As it turns out, Yuta is still alive. Ryoko Tamiya finally shows up, but this time she now goes by the name Reiko Tamura. She sends Hideo Shimada, a lapdog parasite, to spy on Shinichi while pretending to be a transfer student at the same school. Meanwhile, Kana turns a deaf ear at Mitsuo, who keeps on pursuing her. The jealous Mitsuo summons Shinichi to the same place in an attempt to recreate his hostility. Much to his dismay, he fails to land a single blow and a grimace replaces the smug look on his face. Sometime elsewhere, Murano voices out her feelings about how Shinichi changed drastically upon his return. She tries to shrug things off, but when Shinichi picks up a dead puppy and just throws its body in a trash bin, she walks away, leaving Shinichi clueless about her reaction. That is until he realizes that he's starting to behave and think like his partner, Mijai. In the end, he buries the dead animal under a tree. At school, Shimada finally meets Shinichi in the flesh. The former claims that he hasn't harmed any humans recently and that he and Tamura have learned to coexist with them. However, Mijai takes his statement with a grain of salt. Suspicious of his true motive, Mijai stays away before sleeping as it'll be a huge problem once the potential enemy learns of it. While testing her superpower to sense her soulmate, as she claims, Kana mistakes Shimada for Shinichi. She quickly gets his attention as Shimada tries to drag her somewhere. Shinichi shows up just in time to save her. He then threatens to kill him once he lays a finger on anyone he knows. Meanwhile, Shimada can be seen devouring a teenage girl, disproving his claims once and for all. It appears that Shimada is trailing behind Kana until she bumps into Mitsuo. This leads to an assault in which the latter gets a taste of his own medicine. One of their classmates, Yuko, happens to be in the area but appears to be blinded by her admiration for Shimada. Back in school, Shimada remains suspicious of the weakened presence of Mijai. To confirm his intuition, he sends a signal of murderous intent only for Shinichi to just casually walk away. Meanwhile, there's an ongoing investigation into Nobuka's death. Kazuyuki finally opens up about what he saw and confirms the sketch artist's work as the suspect. Later on, he tells the same thing to his son, to which Shinichi just listens but still refuses to confess about his hand. It appears that Yuko's brother is the sketch artist as she accidentally catches sight of the parasite at his drawing pad. Unaware that her crush is one of them, Yuko shows him her drawing in hopes to get his brother's impression. Out of nowhere, a flying baseball lands on Shimada's head. Much to Yuko's surprise, his deformed head comes back to its normal shape as if nothing happened. Just when Shinichi finally musters the courage to apologize to Murano, Mijai senses a potential massacre near the school grounds. He intercepts just in time before Shimada goes into a rampage with his true nature. While he's at it, he reminds the thugs not to mess with Shimada. After what happened, Yuko tells Shimada after school. She grows more and more suspicious of her crush when she witnesses him changing his face. Right there and then, Yuko believes that he's a monster. The next morning, Yuko confronts Shimada about him being a parasite, which he confirms by morphing into his true form. Yuko throws Shimada a toxic chemical that she prepared beforehand. Desperate to escape, she jumps off the building, narrowly escaping her death. Unable to transform back to his human face, Shimada goes into a frenzied state and slaughters every person he runs into. Shortly, the students evacuate the school compound with some people taking the emergency as a laughing matter. Shinichi, who knows all too well, comes back inside the building to save Murano. However, he loses his wits at the scene of carnage. Mijai comes to his aid until he finally calms down. Shinichi manages to secure Murano's safety but fails to do the same with some students who ran away from him, claiming he's a monster himself. To finally put an end to Shimada's madness, Shinichi climbs to a rooftop far enough for his presence not to be detected. Shinichi then throws a rock straight into Shimada's heart. Meanwhile, the government holds an emergency meeting where a scientist has figured out a way to distinguish a human from a parasite. It's simple, plucking a strand of hair. If by any chance it wriggles, the hair owner is a parasite. As such, a sober woman plucks a hair from a man she's clearly hitting on. It wriggles and so, she ends up kicking the bucket. Kana recalls the day she sensed the same wavelength between Shinichi and Shimada. Much to her delight, Shinichi saves her the trouble and gives him a strand of his hair. Mijai reminds him yet again to stay away from Kana. Meanwhile, a parasite named Gota wreaks havoc in a Yakuza gang, apparently just testing his strength with no intention of devouring their flesh. After killing 22 of his prey, he transforms into one of the onlookers and meets with Kasano, another parasite. Despite Mijai's warning, Shinichi sets out to meet Kana who, after witnessing Murano and Kenichi kissing, continues her pursuit of his knight and shining armor. However, while waiting for Kana, Mijai detects multiple parasites close by, seemingly working as a group. Amongst them catches a glimpse of Shinichi, who's trying to compose himself. It appears that Hirakawa, a parasite, is running for mayor. Mijai gives two possible reasons for Hirakawa's run for office. It's either he really took a liking to politics, or he'll use the platform as a complete facade to secure a safe haven where humans will be harvested as livestock for parasites. After contemplating telling Kana his secret, Shinichi finally confesses his condition while Mijai is asleep. To his surprise, Kana's all nonchalant about his revelation. Kana believes that Shinichi is telling her lies to get rid of her for good. She demands proof, but since Mijai is resting, he can't provide such. Before leaving, Kana reveals that she can sense Shinichi's presence apart from the other monsters. Sometime later, Shinichi reveals to Mijai that he has told Kana their secret, though Mijai isn't surprised at all. Mijai, on the other hand, tells Shinichi that Kana can somehow emit the same signals detectable by parasites. In the end, he manages to convince his partner to show itself to Kana. Shinichi cancels his date with Murano to meet Kana. However, some parasites suddenly appear, so their meeting place is changed. Shinichi tries to contact Hana about her whereabouts, but to no avail. Kana intentionally leaves her phone to prove her power that she can tell Shinichi apart from others. She continues to follow her instinct until she runs into a parasite feasting upon his prey. With Shinichi in mind, Kana runs for her life until her knight actually shows up, but he's a second late as a blade penetrates her body. Thanks for watching part 1. If you enjoyed this and want to see a part 2, then comment part 2 below. Also, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you never miss a future video, and until next time guys, take care!